Welcome to Schweitzer Drive, a podcast where we explore what goes on between the generation of electricity and the light switch. Join Dave Whitehead as he interviews the entrepreneurs, innovators, and experts who are inventing the future of electric power.
Hi, I'm Dave Whitehead. Welcome to Schweitzer Drive. In today's digital world, the threat of cybersecurity breaches is ever looming, and the need for professionals who can protect against them is increasing. In fact, unfulfilled security jobs around the world have jumped 350% between 2013 and 2021. So, how are schools preparing for the next generation of professionals to fill these roles? What are educators doing to ensure grads are equipped with the right tools to successfully combat cyber attacks? Who better to dig into this topic than a man whose efforts resulted in Idaho's first Bachelor of Science in Cybersecurity program? My guest today is Dr. Jim Alves-Foss, a distinguished professor at the University of Idaho, where he's taught computer science since 1992 and directs the Center for Secure and Dependable Systems Research Unit. Dr. Alves-Foss' work has been sponsored by the National Science Foundation, the Department of Defense, and more. He's mentored countless students and published over 100 peer-reviewed conference and journal papers. I'm so excited to have Jim here with me today to talk about cybersecurity. And a little-known fact probably is I was a student of Jim's way back when. In fact, the funny story was I was doing some graduate work, and I saw Jim's cybersecurity class come up, and I just signed up for it, not realizing there was a bunch of prerequisites that had to come before you take this class. And so I got a note from Jim saying, you can't take my class. You didn't do any prerequisites. So I kind of begged and whined, and he let me take his class. And I ended up getting an A out of it, but I kind of broke the rules, and Jim was nice enough to let me take his class, which is excellent, by the way. If you get a chance to take one of his classes, I highly recommend. So that's your plug for the day, Jim. Jim, welcome.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Dave.
Let's get into this. I've been looking forward to having this conversation with you. So, first of all, where does your interest in cybersecurity stem from?
Oh, now we're taking us way back.
Let's do it.
So, I give a little history prior to that. So, I've got my bachelor's degree at the University of California, Davis, in mathematics, computer science, and physics. While I was trying to decide what to do with my life, I had a long discussion with my then fiance, now wife, and we decided my love was computer science, not physics. I should go to graduate school in computer science. And so I went there to do artificial intelligence. 1987, AI, groundbreaking. The professor I wanted to work with quit. I was scrambling around trying to find somebody else to work with, and Dr. Carl Levitt had come to the university. He had a background in cybersecurity, and he had funding. So he says, I need somebody to help me with mathematical models of proving systems are secure. You've got a math background. I was taking a cybersecurity class. He says, why don't you join my team? And so I said, sure, it's a job. I'll take it. I'll do it. And I kept going. And then I was really heavily focused on the mathematical models, but the security stuff kept coming back as more interesting. Now this is back 87. The internet wasn't public. By 91, I came here, recruited by another fellow UC Davis alumni, and we were going to build a mathematical model, formal methods program. But the internet started exploding, and we said, oh, there's all these security concerns. Maybe we should focus on that. And so I taught our first cybersecurity class, spring of 92, and kept seeing more and more problems come up, more and more people not understanding what was going on. So I said, well, this is an interesting area. There's lots of problems to solve. And so, yeah.
You taught your first class in 92 in cybersecurity, and we can do the math real quick. You're a math person. That was quite a while ago.
30 years,
technology has certainly changed a lot since 92 to where we're at today. But have cybersecurity, the roots of the cybersecurity problems, have they changed much over 30 years?
So that's a yes and no.
Okay.
The roots of them. So there's a problem in cybersecurity we call a buffer overflow. So you think of something like my name, James, 5 letters, 5 characters. When I read it into a computer, it has to store it somewhere. So we call that a buffer, an array buffer. Well, the programmer has to decide how much space to make. So maybe they say, okay, you're going to put in your name. Full name. I'm going to give you room for 20 letters, 20 characters. And somebody types in 50. Well, if the programmer's not careful, those 50 exceed the space they allocated and start doing changes to the rest of the program, affecting other data in the program, and can cause many problems. The first report of this was in the 1960s. And even though we teach students how to do the checks, we teach people how to do the checks, it's still one of the leading causes of faults and problems in software. And we're talking 60 years later, 50 years later. So, that type of thing, people making mistakes, not having their programs do the right checks is a fundamental cybersecurity problem. My definition of a secure computer is one that does what I should have told it to do, because inevitably I will tell it to do the wrong thing.
I can make another joke. I guess the only secure computer is one that's turned off.
I've heard that too. Unfortunately, we've had instances you put your data on that computer, on the hard drive, you turn it off, somebody steals it, it's still not secure.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. It's a tough problem, but that's kind of interesting, right? You mentioned that we have suffered with buffer overflows as one example from a cybersecurity vulnerability for years and years. Why in the hell can't we just solve that problem? We know what it is. Why can't I fix it? This
becomes a political answer.
Okay.
Well,
'tis the season, right? With elections right around the corner. Why not?
So we did a study several years ago where we looked at Department of Labor statistics and we looked at National Science Foundation statistics. So Department of Labor said at that point there were 3.3 million jobs in the United States that required a bachelor's degree in computer science. Well, since 1970 something, when we started offering the first bachelor in computer science, the United States has graduated 1.7 million bachelors in computer science at that time. So 1.8 million gap. And not all of them came from India and China to solve these problems. A lot of people were retrained on the job. They started with different disciplines. They came in, looking further at the Department of Labor statistics. It was about, at that point, 50 to 60% of the people did not have a bachelor's in computer science that were holding these jobs. So the question I always ask is, do they have the right training, the right background? Did they come at this at an odd way? I mean, I taught myself to program back in the late 70s, early 80s, before I started taking official classes. But I did get a bachelor's in computer science, but a lot of people don't. So are they missing something? That's the first. The second thing is, as a discipline, computer scientists are trying really hard to make software development easier. You don't have to have a computer science degree or engineering degree to create a website, to do things. And if those tools are not inherently secure, then we have the problem of people doing the wrong thing. And there's lots of examples of that out there, of people, I'll download this toolkit. The programmer said, I'm going to make this available. Do step A, B, and C. You got a secure system. They do A and B. They say, it works. I'm done. They forget to do C, and it's not secure. And so people's our biggest problem.
Well, and you're an educator, so you're one of the solutions. It made me think a little bit about this is standing up a website. You don't need a computer science degree anymore to do it. The tools are set out there easy. And I can, if I look back in history, the internet, it has lots of challenges, but it was also set up to make things easy for people, right? You want to be able to send an email. So there was always this idea of convenience. And we always start building something on the idea of, wouldn't this be better, or all the positive benefits. I don't think we ever start to design something with cyber in mind. And then we always try to bolt on cyber at the end, whether it's programming language, the internet, all these other things. And in your experience, have you ever seen where we start with security first to solve we have to do something and we start analyzing with security first, and then how we go about doing the rest of whatever it is we're trying to accomplish?
Very, very few cases. I mean, and some of these go back to the 70s and 80s when they're saying, how do we build a secure system for, say, protecting nuclear weapons research data, protecting national security issues? And there was a lot of work done back then on how to do that. Some of the foundational work was done by John Rushby at Stanford Research Institute, now just called SRI. And it was on virtual machine technology. And basically he said, here's what we need to do. And people looked at it and said, great, now let's wait till the hardware catches up so we can actually do this. And they had a meeting in 94 with the NSA about this. And they said, nope, we still not wait. And then I got in a meeting involved with him in about 2001 where they said, okay, finally the hardware's caught up. Now we can start doing this solution from your 1982 paper. And it's helped a lot with the virtual machine technology and some of the separation. But in the meantime, people were building things without thinking of the security because, hey, I can get it to market. That's what matters.
I'd like to pivot. We're talking about the need for educated people, and really cybersecurity has grown into its own. I'll call it science or specialty, if you will. In fact, you at University of Idaho have created a bachelor's degree program right now that is focused on cybersecurity. Could you tell us a little bit about it and the motivations and the whys behind it? And when's your first graduate going to happen?
Okay, so first graduate should be May of 2024. There, because he's that batch of students are juniors. So they finish a junior year now, awesome. And then the seniors. But there'll only be a handful of them. So like I said, we started teaching cybersecurity in 92. First had just the one class. And I was showing my students the book, the 300-page book that contained all we knew about cybersecurity at the time. And then we added a network security class, and then we added computer forensics, and then we did other things. And actually, I would say 10 to 15 years ago, we started thinking we need a full degree because everything we were doing was computer science centric. And we're saying there's a whole lot more to cyber than just that. But we had the Great Recession and downturns in enrollments, downturns in funding. So everything was put on hold basically for a decade. And then we got a new administration here who said, go ahead, grow the program. So we put together the paperwork, designed the program. Now, it's still computer science centric. Our program is. There are programs out there that are based in colleges of business that are talking about policy and legal aspects and those things. Ours is still, how do you write secure code? How do you evaluate the hardware? How do you handle the networking? There's also other programs out there that are IT based. How do you secure the current network? How do you build a system administrator who can configure and manage the system securely? We're not doing that. We're more like, how do you analyze that website? How do you develop that software in a way that it's secure, that it can protect you? So how do you build a better future? So heavy, the first 2 years almost identical to the undergraduate in computer science. We have an intro cyber course, a cyber basically management course where the students put together policy documents. What's the personnel security policy? What's the contingency plan, incident response plan, those things. And then we have a secure coding course in the sophomore level. The junior and senior levels, then we get into the weeds. How do you do networks and do network defense, operating system defense? We have a year-long lab class that the students also do hands-on. So even the individual classes will have labs, and then there's just this regular lab that they do year-long. And then their senior year software vulnerability now is computer forensics and a senior design project where they work on a year-long complex, comprehensive project for cyber. So it's a full degree, lots of material, lots of interesting stuff, and students can branch out many different ways from there.
I wish I was back in my 20s because I'm pretty sure I'd enroll for that degree.
So would I.
You talked a little bit about the lab, and you helped establish the Center for Secure and Dependable Systems, or CSDS. Could you tell us a little bit about it, what its purpose is, and how it came about? I've had the opportunity to go and tour it. It is really, really cool. I think people would love to hear about it.
So CSDS is a research center at the university. We established in 1999. Basically as a way of consolidation of resources. Could we, shared lab space, shared staff, shared computer equipment, servers, et cetera, so that faculty, an individual faculty member may not be able to get a powerful server to run their experiments on, and they may not need it all the time. So if we partner up with other faculty, we can share that resource. We have a wonderful assistant who works for me, and she helps multiple faculties on grant proposal writing, grant management, outreach to the community. And so she helps maybe 6-7 different faculty at any semester. And by being able to consolidate these resources, we do this. Then we can also populate labs. So we have one of the labs I think you were talking about, which is our Schweitzer Engineering Lab named.
I am fond of that one.
Fond of that one. Great donation from you guys. And we have students in there working on both graphical interfaces for power grid control, looking at, what the human would see from the control system point of view, but also the majority of the students there are working on a project with you guys. We're trying to figure out how do we build a more secure system from the ground up. What are the policies needed? What are the requirements needed to build a embedded control system, a device that could run the power grid, that could run manufacturing or whatever, that is inherently secure? And so they're working. I've got a whole new team of students, 6 new ones this semester, that are we're training them up real quick to try and get them to help us answer these questions. But that's the fun part of this, training up the students, getting them to learn. Get them some hands-on experience, get them to answer the tough questions, getting them thinking about the future.
Speaking of lab, I just had a thought. There's probably different ways you can think about networks. I usually break them up into two different categories. One is an IT, how do you run your office systems, and then the other one's an OT, right? The stuff we'd find in, say, substations or automation floors, or plant in network systems in automation plants like our factories or something like that. And one is the IT systems got to be really flexible. I got phones that are coming on. I want to print stuff. Printers are coming in and off the networks and managing those things. Whereas the OT systems, once you design them, you kind of just want to let them run, right? You don't want people shouldn't be plugging in printers or adding devices or removing devices. You set them up, you let them run. From your perspective, from a cybersecurity perspective, which is easier to protect?
Well, absolutely the OT type, from what you're saying. And that's actually in the project we're working on now. We're saying for now, our fundamental assumption is this is not a dynamic system. Somebody's not downloading new software because, hey, here's an app I want to run. Better yet, they're not running a web browser and going out and visiting all these websites with bad content on them from an OT device. So we can lock down a lot of things. We can say statically, no, this is the way it is. So we don't have to have a system that is ultimately infinitely configurable and say, no, let's lock it down. Let's control it. There's still a lot of work to be done in those systems. Don't get me wrong, but I think they are tractable.
Yeah, we have an advantage then on the OT side because it is static, that our space is contained, if you will. We don't have to worry about a whole bunch of other things.
Right. There's still issues. So one thing we're struggling with right now in work is how we define what it means for a system to be secure. And we've broken up into 4 categories. So there's like the software that's running as I've written it. Is it protected from malicious input? Is it protected from just random things that could cause it to misbehave? I think we can solve that problem. If they're running 2 pieces of software, 3 pieces of software in the same computer, are they isolated from each other? I think we can solve that problem. Is that piece of software using libraries, operating system routines, other things that it's gotten up from other sources? Is it using them safely, correctly, and is it protected from them? I think we can solve that problem. This is all good. The hard problem. What is the software written to do? Is it doing that correctly? Right? So I could say, I'm writing the software that collects all your personal data and then publishes it to a website. It does it all correctly, but I don't think that's secure. Or worse, an example of something that got me thinking about this, Air Force was trying to update a computer system to run on an airplane, so embedded control system. Nobody made that microprocessor anymore they were running on. They didn't want to redo the software. So they created a virtual machine, a simulator for that microprocessor, ran it on top of a more secure processor, but then ran the simulator of an insecure processor inside it. And so the software that was running was simulating something completely insecure and doing it well.
Yeah.
And so, at that point, we lose. But in an OT device, we can say, we know what the software has to do. No, we're not going to let it simulate an insecure processor. We're going to limit ourselves here and then focus on those. So I think we still have a chance there.
Yeah, we certainly bound the problem more clearly than say IT systems. Speaking of industrial systems, do you think from a cybersecurity perspective that we're getting better? And by better, I'm thinking about more secure, simpler to deploy, and maybe the problems are becoming easier to solve?
So yes, we are becoming better. I remember my first Wi-Fi router that I had at home. It had admin as the login and admin as the password, and it was default. Every single router that you bought had that. They now ship them with unique passwords for each router. Companies are learning to ship things with security turned on by default. That's number one. Companies are starting to think, oh, this is important. This is something our customers want. We're going to spend a little more time and effort making this secure as designed before we ship it. So there we're doing this. The problem is, so I show my students this. Technology changes all the time. So I show my students, I tell them to Google Pope inauguration. Pope Benedict was inaugurated in 2005. Pope Francis was inaugurated in 2012. There are pictures of the crowds outside the inauguration. 2005, sea of people, one or two cell phones, some cameras out. 2012, a sea of cell phones and tablets.
Wow.
Everybody had them. And that is disruptive technology, complete change. We all now have a pocket computer. We didn't have that before 2005. We weren't thinking people would be walking around with a computer more powerful than what ran the space shuttle in our pockets. And so what do? And that's where I think we have problems, because now, I can sell an app for this pocket computer that you have, this powerful computer you have in your pocket. But I'm thinking of it as a personal device, so I'm not thinking about it being connected to 5 billion people on the world in the internet at the same time. And I'm not thinking about security. So in some ways we're getting better, in some ways we're getting worse.
Yeah, I think that comes back to we create the technology and then we think about security as an afterthought.
Right. Software is that way. A material scientist won't create a new alloy and then suddenly build a bridge out of it. They will do a lot of testing and evaluation. With us, we create software and we ship it. And then we do the testing and evaluation because it's too easy to ship. And
then we let the billion of people that downloaded that app test it for us, right? And that's
we do that.
Learn.
And with the bridge, if it collapses, I'm liable. Software, it fails. I said, no, the end user license agreement said you're just licensing this and I'm not liable if it goes wrong. And you agreed to that.
That could be a whole different or a whole nother podcast just talking about end user license agreements. And
this is where the business people have to get involved, and the lawyers.
Yeah, a lot of lawyers. So we talked about the complexity of our systems continuing to grow. I know some of our folks have been working with you to sit back and really ask a deep question. Is it time to reset the complexity and address the question, what is inherently secure cyber? I mean, that's a pretty deep and, scratch your head kind of question to ask. What are your thoughts on that and how's it going?
Well, so I kind of addressed some of that with the questions of we're breaking up into 4 categories. And some of this I think is doable. When we say we are focusing on an OT system, we are focusing on this. What are the inherent security problems we see in general purpose computing? And some of those can we design out? Can we say, no, we don't need that capability. That just causes us more headaches than it's worth. So we're looking at that. We're coming up with some ideas. I was working this morning before this on a simulator to simulate some of those ideas, to do some experimenting and testing. And I think part of it is tractable. It's going to require a mental shift on some of the developers. We're going to have to do things a little differently, which is always a concern because people want to get their jobs done and they don't want to learn something new that's harder. But I think when we get there, we will have a system that at least within the code itself, it's protected. Arbitrary inputs and other things won't go wrong, that the developer really can't make a mistake that would cause a security problem, not easily at least, that it will be detectable and fixable. They can deliberately set it up wrong. What one company I was working with, the chief technical officer was calling them cowboy programmers. They shot from the hip and they always thought they knew what they were doing. And they turned off all the checks and security because that just slowed down their work. We still have to deal with those, and that's still that personnel issue, but I think we're going to get there. Have a new design microprocessor that has built-in security features, takes the choices away, from the software developers or enforces what they thought were the choices they were making when they were programming. A lot of developers assume certain security features and other things when they write code that aren't actually in the system. And so we want to bake those into the system.
Can you, this is along the lines of those deep questions. Can you, in the cyber world, get to a point where you can prove that something is cyber secure?
The question is, what is secure, right? So I can write what I call secure program. Nobody can cause it to misbehave. Nobody can do anything wrong with it. And it simulates an insecure processor. And in that simulation, it can be attacked.
Yeah, this is what always hurts my head when I start thinking about cybersecurity. It's like electrical engineering is pretty easy, right? I can start with Maxwell's equations, right, and derive everything else, and they follow nice laws of physics, where cybersecurity is a little bit different in that, man, I don't have the equivalent of Maxwell's equations to start with.
Right, but you can still you can design, using Maxwell equation, electrical system that could kill me.
Yeah.
You could, the equations, you know how to do it right, but you could deliberately do it wrong. We can still do the same thing with software. So what I want to do is prevent the developers from accidentally building the wrong system. Say, if you follow these guidelines, it's going to be secure. I think we can get there, but we can't get everything completely secure.
But you brought up the good point, right? As I said, can you build a secure system? And your first response to me was, well, what is secure? I don't get to debate what Maxwell's equations are. They are what they are, right? We
but
start
you can
there, and I
debate
can't
what
change
is safe. Is it what's the voltage
true.
that is safe? What's the current that is safe?
Well, I think physics again, my body can only tolerate so many volts or amps going through it, right? I think those are defined too. But you bring up that good question, and I think that's where people stumble a lot too, is agreeing on what is secure.
Yes, and
I've seen a lot of debates about that.
Yeah, classic papers back from the 1980s when they were doing this, debating what is secure.
Yeah, fascinating papers, geeky good read.
Yeah, I probably brought up in the class you took.
You probably did. By the way, take the class. That's my second pitch for it. The program you guys have going at U of I is outstanding. I know from our perspective, we need cybersecurity experts. So the work you're doing is going to certainly help fulfill that need. Unfortunately,
it'll be a drop in the bucket. Even if we graduated 1,000 students a year, it would be a drop in the bucket. And we're not going to do 1,000 students a year.
No, you got it. But you got to start somewhere too, right? Any other thoughts on cybersecurity?
So one thing that came up in a recent discussion, so we recently had a celebration of our 30 years of cybersecurity education here. And we were talking to some people from industry, and they said they're having a problem. They don't know if they should hire cybersecurity people because the degrees are so disparate. Is this an IT person? Is this a business person? Is this a computer science related person? Is this a networking person? Each of them have different skill sets. And they say just the label cybersecurity degree, they don't know what it means. So I think we as a community need to start emphasizing what these really mean to help industry figure out, okay, this is the person you want to hire. You don't want to hire that business person for the networking job.
Yeah.
But most importantly, all the degrees have to make sure we teach the students to think outside the box. I know that's cliche, but basically, think what you want the system to do and think there are people who are going to, bad guys lie, cheat, and steal, and good guys make mistakes. So never trust anything. Think, this is what I thought this is going to do. Well, what could go wrong? Let's think broadly what could go wrong. You don't have to know exactly how the attackers are going to attack you, but think broadly what could go wrong and write your code to prevent that. Don't assume anything. Don't assume that the end user is going to send you the data that you asked for. If we can get them thinking that way and being lifelong learners, willing to learn that new technology, because guess what? That cell phone changed everything. Other technology comes out, is changing everything. They have to learn about that technology. So being willing to do that. If we can get that, they will grow in their careers and be relevant throughout their careers.
Yeah, I like that lifelong learning because everything changes, especially in the technology
history
world.
Less so, but
Yeah, true that. Jim, it's been a great conversation. Thanks so much for talking about cybersecurity. If you do me a favor, double the class size of your students going through your program, and
we're trying.
I know they'll all have jobs when they graduate.
Our intro cyber class, the first time I taught it, had 30 students. It now has 80. So that's going up.
I hope you have some TAs to help you out.
I'm not teaching it, so.
So it doesn't matter.
But a colleague is, and yes, she has a TA. So
very good. All right, Jim. Thanks again for the conversation. Look forward to seeing you in your labs sometime soon.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for stopping by Schweitzer Drive. Join us again as we learn about, explore, and celebrate electric power. For more information about the show, please visit selinc.com/Schweitzer Drive.